My first introduction to the web-headed menace known as Spider-Man was in Disney's XD show called The Ultimate Spider-Man, which ran from 2012 to 2017. To me, the show was amazing as a kid. I loved seeing Spider-Man with his team and watching him juggle school while training in a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility. The one-off villains were always fun, and the multiple episode arcs with Green Goblin and him deciding not to join the Avengers were some of my favorites of all times. I really grew up loving the webhead because of this series. Flash forward to 2013 on a nice summer's night, and the first Spider-Man movie I ever watched was The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield. As a 13-year-old, it was everything I wanted out of a movie. There was teenage angst, the cutest couple ever in Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, played by Emma Stone, a lot of good action, and a Spider-Man who was quippy but also had a really soft side. Over the past couple of months, I rewatched the majority of the Spider-Man movies in preparation for Spider-Man No Way Home. I even sat down with my boyfriend and we played through the entirety of the Spider-Man PS4 game and the Miles Morales game. After watching all this Spider-Man in my life, it got me thinking as to what makes a good Spider-Man story, and why do we as an audience relate to him in 2002 when we first saw him, and 20 years later in 2022. With the release of Spider-Man No Way Home, I really wanted to sit down and wonder what makes this web-headed kid so appealing. I feel like everyone has their own opinion on what makes a good Spider-Man story, and everyone seems to have a favorite actor and era of movies that they relate to the most. My boyfriend grew up with the Raimi movies, and even though Spider-Man 3 isn't a good movie, he holds those films in high regards because he's nostalgic for them, and it reminds him of his childhood. For me, the first Amazing Spider-Man film was my introduction to the webhead in movies, so naturally, I'm nostalgic for Andrew Garfield's interpretation of the character. I also love the style of that first film. I highly recommend giving it a rewatch. Regardless of the Spider-Man that you prefer, it's amazing that everyone can relate to and enjoy the story of Spider-Man. I feel like more than any other hero, Spider-Man is iconic, and while there are some problematic movies in the franchise, as a whole, the lows of Spider-Man never reach the lows of, say, Batman or Superman. And while Batman is a hero that many are nostalgic for and look up to, I always feel that there was a different kind of love for Spider-Man that is unmatched to any other hero. The question is, why? Well, after consuming a lot of the mainstream Spider-Man media, I started to notice a lot of patterns of what makes a good Spider-Man story, and I think it really gets down to what the core of the character is all about. What makes Spider-Man so appealing is that he isn't from an alien planet, and he isn't a person of power who has a lot of money and tech. He wasn't raised by ninjas as a youth or has been trained his whole life to be a superhero. He's just a kid. Well, it's fun to watch Iron Man fly around and hang out in his $1 million mansion and watch Bruce Wayne brood in his Batcave. This type of hero is literally unattainable for people watching these types of stories. Most of the population will never have a Stark-level mansion and the Bruce Wayne-level charm, but all of us were scared kids who had to go through high school and try and figure themselves out. All of us have been the awkward kid in school who's trying to get the girl or boy. All of us had made mistakes, and while trying to fix those mistakes, make it worse. What makes Spider-Man so appealing is that we can put ourselves in Spider-Man's shoes. Usually he isn't saving the universe or stopping universal combustion other than the Avengers movies. He is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man who saves cats from trees, gives old ladies directions, and saves others from damaging the world around them. At its core, Spider-Man is someone who has the power to help those around him, and because of that, he has the responsibility to try and make the world a better place. He's a hero who comes from nothing and always gets back up no matter how down he gets. Spider-Man is someone who sees the good in everyone and refuses to give up on people even if they have hurt him. Spider-Man loves his friends and his family more than anything. His actions are always driven by one thing: to save. What makes the Spider-Man stories so great is that Peter doesn't start out so amazing and altruistic hero, but instead Spider-Man starts out as a hero who uses his power first for revenge and a way to channel his anger. He uses the mask not to save but to get. Over the course of his story, he always learns that anger, fear, and the want for revenge ultimately won't make him happy. Avenging Uncle Ben is not the way to heal from his trauma, but rather using his powers to help others is the way to becoming the hero that New York needs. To wrap this up, my favorite Spider-Man stories always have common story structure. Spider-Man loses someone close to him. He seeks revenge, but realizes that the only way to heal from his pain is to help others. He helps others in small ways and builds a community of people who look up to him for hope. Spider-Man never gives up and sees the good in the villains, even if they are the ones hurting him the most. Sometimes the villains can also be even the ones closest to him, and he realizes that by never giving up on these people, he can save them. At the end of the story, the people in community who have seen his good deeds help him, and even though usually Spider-Man loses something important to him, at the end he realizes that because he had the power to make a change for good, he has to do everything in his power to do that again. Why we relate to Spider-Man is because he is far from perfect. He messes up and has an incredible amount of guilt and pain for the people that he thinks have been hurt through his actions. The core lesson of Spider-Man is that you can't let your pain and anger guide your actions. While none of us have been bitten by a radioactive spider, we all have the power to save, to love, and to make small changes for good. Because all of us have the power to make change for good, we have the responsibility to do so, even if that means just not giving up on the people you love and always choosing saving instead of hurting. Spider-Man asks us to see the good in those that have hurt us. He asks us to instead seek revenge, seek fulfillment, and he reminds us that no matter how many times you get punched down, you always have the strength to get back up. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I haven't done a writing video in a while, and it was good to get back into the swing of things. As usual, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment down below who's your favorite Spider-Man. Again, Andrew Garfield is definitely mine. I love all those little quirks, and the chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield is just amazing. Also, the Miles Morales Spider-Man game was probably also a great example of kind of this story structure for a great Spider-Man movie. It's pretty much everything you would want in that kind of story. Same with the original Spider-Man PS4 game, but something about Miles Morales really clicked with me. So if you guys want good stories, I would definitely recommend watching the cutscenes for those or playing the games. Anyway, that's all for me. I hope you enjoyed watching. Bye!